it did allow them to converse softly. "Will you be all right?" Elaine asked. "I don't believe you mean harm." "Don't worry," Rand replied. "Elida Sedai might be there," she said. "She's of the Red Ajah." "I know," Rand said. "Just don't say anything you shouldn't. Would she be able to sense anything?" she asked, worried. "No," Rand replied, making sure to lower his voice even further. "Men can roughly sense women, but women cannot sense men in any way." The unsaid words being that both the men and women he was referring to were channelers. They had entered the palace and were traversing hallways that were intimately familiar to Rand. He'd spent several months ruling from here after Morghase's disappearance. Could you sense me?" Elaine whispered. "No," Rand said. "You'd have to channel for that." And as Elaine hadn't had lessons yet, he doubted she was able to reliably embrace the source at this point. They entered one of the smaller, though still ornate, audience chambers. Rand smoothly went through the customs for the situation, kneeling and standing at the right times. Throughout it, he looked around the room, noting Gareth Brine, the Captain General and one of the 5 great captains. Though his hair was graying, he still looked strong and immovable as a rock, and was clothed in the red of the Queen's guards. On the other side of the Queen sat Elida, calmly knitting and seemingly not paying attention to anything around her. She had dark brown hair, but other than that it was impossible to tell anything about her age. Like all Aes Sedai, she had the well-known ageless face. Rand knew, however, that she was closing in on 50 years old, meaning she was still young for a channeler. Despite that, he believed that she was respected among the Red Ajah, quite possibly because of her relative strength in the One Power. And last, sitting on her throne, was Queen Morghase. She too was still young, though in a different sense. She had no extended lifespan like the Aes Sedai did, but there were few women who had 2 adult children, yet were still only in their early 40s. Morghase was one of them, and she had so far retained her beauty, albeit more mature than Elaine's. She was, of course, wearing the rose crown of Andor, and a long red stole depicting the Lion of Andor hung over her shoulders. She was also, to Rand's surprise, though he should maybe have expected it, wearing a ring that depicted the great serpent eating its own tail, the sign of the Aes Sedai. Then again, no matter how weak, she was technically a channeler, and had received some training in the White Tower. Any woman who had done so could wear that ring. After they had paid their respects and Morghase had told them to rise, Elaine was the first to speak, but her mother interrupted her immediately. Rand waited silently while the princess was chastised for going out to sneak a look at Loghain. Finally, Morghase turned her attention to Rand, though she still spoke to her daughter. "Now there is the problem of this young man, and how and why he came here, and why you claim guest right for him to Galad." "May I speak, mother?" Morghase nodded. "I claimed guest right because I do not believe him a danger," Elaine said, choosing her words carefully. "An innocent man should not be sent to a cell for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, not even for a few days." "Then what do you believe him to be?" Morghase asked. "A loyal subject," Elaine said. "Mother, you often say I must know our people, but whenever I actually meet them, there are a dozen attendants nearby. How can I get to know commoners if I can never speak to them by myself?" "A loyal subject," Morghase said doubtfully, although someone not familiar with the ways and customs of nobility might underestimate just how doubtful she was of that assertion. "What is your name, and where are you from?" "Rand Althor, and I am from 2 Rivers, my queen." That caused several raised eyebrows. "A loyal subject," Morghase repeated, stressing those words slightly. "From the 2 Rivers. Your Majesty, if I may speak." "You may. I know that most of the people from 2 Rivers are not even aware that the area is a part of the nation of Andor. However, my father has taught me more about the world than that. The people of 2 Rivers," Elida spoke up, "are dark of hair and eye, and seldom have such height." "They do," Rand said, unfazed. "I was not born in 2 Rivers, my father, who is not my father by blood, but has cared for me all my life, found me when I was a newborn in the arms of a dying mother." He took me in and raised me when he went back to his farm. Elida had stood up from her stool and walked closer, inspecting him. You are not a commoner, she said. You may wear the clothes of one, but you hold yourself as a noble, I would almost say, a king. Their eyes met, and Rand held her gaze, not yielding. She slowly reached out, then removed the cloth hiding Rand's sword. Nor does a commoner from the Two Rivers have a heron-marked blade. The reaction throughout the entire hall was significant, and the guards were clearly prepared to draw their weapons if needed. The only ones who seemed unperturbed were Gawain and Elaine. But then, Rand had already shown them bigger surprises. My father won it during the Isle War, Rand said truthfully, and he has trained me with it. We are currently staying in the city, and when I wanted to see the false dragon, he did not want me to be unarmed. Aes Sedai might be famous and notorious for their ability to lie while speaking the truth, a skill they had honed for centuries after the introduction of the oath that left them unable to speak a lie. But Rand had picked up some skills in the area himself. When dealing with nobles, or Aes Sedai for that matter, it was very valuable to never lie, even if only to avoid spinning a web one could not find a way out of. Rand had technically never stated that he and his father were traveling alone. What are you saying, Elida? Morghese asked. The Dark One stirs in Sheol Ghul. The shadow lies across the pattern, and the future is balanced on the point of a pin. This one is important. As she stopped speaking, Rand's mind was cast back to the first time he had been here. She had spoken those exact words, except that time she had finished by saying, "This one is dangerous." "Is this one of your foretellings, Elida?" Morghese asked sharply. "Speak clearly." Foretellings, Rand knew, came unexpectedly and would present differently between different people, and even the same person could get foretellings in different manners. Suddenly, he wondered whether he had made a mistake. Previously, Elida's foretelling had almost landed him in a dungeon, and this time it was far less likely that Morghese would believe him naive and rule that he could go free based on that. "This I foretell," Elida said, "and I swear under the light that I can speak it no clearer. The shadow has yet to darken to its blackest, and I cannot see if the light will come after. But this man will be the eye of the storm, an isle of calm in a sea of destruction. He holds himself like a ruler, and indeed he shall lead. He shall conquer, and he shall protect. And the throne of Andor and the court of Caemlyn will be shielded by his noble blood." Rand was unable to keep the shock off his face, albeit not for the reason others would assume. The first words had been similar to the foretelling he remembered, but it had then departed into a completely different direction, towards praise and hope, rather than condemnation and despair. Elida herself seemed just as shocked by her words as Rand was, but even then it took mere seconds before she schooled her face into the emotionless Aes Sedai look. Most of the other people in the room were equally stunned, though Elaine and Gawain looked at Rand in awe. He hoped they'd be able to stay silent, because even with this unexpected foretelling, he doubted Elida would react well to the revelation that he was a channeler. Regaining her composure, the Aes Sedai walked back over to Morghese and started whispering in the Queen's ear. After a few seconds of back and forth, Morghese spoke loud and clear. "Everyone except the Captain General, Gawain, Elaine, and Elaine's guest, leave. And no word of this to anyone." The guards complied with the Queen's order, while Elida remained even though Morghese had not named her. Aes Sedai always did consider them above the authority of even monarchs, Rand mused. Although he had to admit that in this case, she had a good reason to stay, and Morghese had probably meant for her to do so. Of course, there was absolutely no way this foretelling would remain secret, no matter how loyal the Queen's guards were. However, that wasn't very important to Rand, as he'd be traveling to the Blight, then to Shadar Logoth for the cleansing of Saidin, and then to Ter in one go, and he should arrive at all locations before the rumors would. Secrecy was no longer necessary after today. "Rand al'Thor," Morghese said once everyone had departed. "That is what you said your name was, is it not?" "It is, my queen," Rand responded. "I have many questions I wish to ask you myself, but I will allow Elida to question you first." Perhaps she can unearth more of what her foretelling refers to, and the role you will play in it." Elida nodded, as if that were an expected courtesy. "You said that the man you call father found you as a newborn, and my foretelling said you had noble blood. What is your true heritage?" Rand's first impulse was to refuse to answer, or claim he did not know, or even apply some misdirection and tell her that his father hadn't known. However, as he considered the question more, as well as Elida's foretelling, he realized that they would likely trust him more if they knew it, even if he was loath to provide Elida anything that might benefit her. "My father by blood is Janduan of the Taodad Ayel," Rand spoke. He'd decided to give the background first, as he suspected that this way his audience would be more amenable to what he would eventually reveal. Although he was the clan chief of the Taodad, that position is not hereditary, so one cannot speak of nobility there. "My mother was Shail, a maiden of the spear, also of the Tawadad Ayel." He paused there, glancing at Elida. "Woman who is dedicated." The Aes Sedai translated the name from the old tongue. "I presume that is not the name she was given at birth." "No, it is not," Rand confirmed. "She was a highly unusual maiden, as she was not born an Aiel. Rather, she was already an adult when she joined the clan. And she came from the lands west of the spine of the world," Elida clarified. "She does. In fact, her decision to join the Aiel was prompted by the foretelling of another Aes Sedai." "I find that unlikely," Elida stated. "I am not aware of any sister alive other than me who possesses any talent of foretelling." "Guitarra Moroso," Rand said. Elida paused. You either know more about Aes Sedai than almost any man alive to forge a story so extraordinary without any impossibilities, or you are speaking the truth." Morghese gasped, drawing everyone's attention. "Why Queen?" Rand asked, although he suspected Morghese had realized where he was heading. "Guitarra Moroso was an advisor of Queen Mordrellin," Morghese said, "whose daughter Tigraine disappeared in 972 NE. "Wait, does that mean you're Galad's brother?" Elaine exclaimed, turning to Rand. Goyim seemed equally flabbergasted at the idea. "Unfortunately," Rand smirked, making Elaine giggle. "This is not the time for levity," Morghese reprimanded. "You say you really are Tigraine's son, then?" She turned her severe gaze to Rand. "I am, my queen. Please believe me when I say I have no intention to cause unrest, whether among the nobility or the people. I support you, and will support Lady Elaine if anything were to leave you incapable of continuing your rule. Even aside from anything else, I do not have any surviving blood relations other than Galad, including from my bloodfather's side, while from my adopted family I have only my father, as my mother died when I was a child." "I find it difficult to believe that you were raised in Two Rivers," Morghese observed. Rand chastised himself. Of course, a boy from Two Rivers wouldn't grasp those political implications. "I have had an unusual life, and I doubt it will become any less unusual in the coming years," Rand said carefully. "An Aes Sedai I have recently traveled with, as well as an Ogier I met, believe that I am a Ta'veren." That statement was met with a long silence, ending when the Captain General spoke up for the first time in the conversation. "I do not believe I am familiar with the term, although it is clearly from the old tongue," Brian said. Surprisingly, Elida was not the one to explain the term, as she seemed lost in thought. "A Ta'veren is someone who is a focal point in the pattern," Morghese explained. "Their destiny is tightly bound, and they walk unusual paths, often affecting the people around them in strange ways." Again, silence reigned for several seconds, until Elida spoke up. "Long ago, when I was but an accepted, I had a foretelling, one that has guided me my entire life to this point. It was frustratingly vague, as foretellings often are, but it revealed that the royal line of Andor would be the key to defeating the Dark One in the last battle. This foretelling is what motivated my decision to become an advisor to Queen Morghese." Rand considered that. If I may ask, Elida Sedai, who was Queen of Andor when you had this foretelling? Queen Mordrellon, she answered. Who was of the Mantier line, not the Drakand line that Queen Morghese is from, Rand realized. Indeed, Elida said. I thought I had initially misinterpreted the foretelling, and that it referred to the ruling house of Andor as the Mantier line was believed extinct. I am now wondering whether I was mistaken. This conversation had ended up going into a completely different direction from anything Rand had and could have expected. He had not known anything about this older foretelling by Elida, but perhaps it, and the resulting difference in attitude compared to the Elida he remembered, opened up new options. The wheel wove as it wanted, he thought to himself, and not as he, or anyone else, wanted or expected. How am I supposed to respond to this? Morghese asked Elida. What you are revealing is not very reassuring. Your Majesty, Rand spoke. Elida Sedai's foretelling earlier today said I would shield the throne of Andor and the court of Caemlyn. Although I do not know what is meant by this, I wish to assure you that I have every intention to live up to those words. I know that you are a good and just queen, and I have no wish nor desire to rule Andor in any way. And if I am to play a role in the last battle, as Elida Sedai seems to believe, I have no doubt that I will be too busy with everything the pattern will put on my path in the first place. You appear unfazed to hear the last battle is coming, Morghese said. Without waiting for a response, she turned back to Elida. Do you believe it is close? If this man is indeed the key my foretelling spoke of, she responded, it may be closer than I thought. It is, Rand said. I spoke of an Aes Sedai I have been traveling with. Thanks to her knowledge, I was already aware of the coming of Tamon Gaidon, and that I would likely have a role to play in it. You seem to have made peace with that, Morghese observed. I have, my queen. Silence reigned for a few seconds before Morghese spoke again. If anything, I only have more questions than I did when Elida gave her foretelling. However, this meeting, already unusual to begin with, merely grows longer and longer. Rand al'Thor, considering the foretelling and these questions, I wish to invite you to stay at the palace for the foreseeable future. I am honored, Your Majesty, Rand said, genuinely not having expected the offer, but I fear I cannot accept, as I need to prepare for what I know is to come. I am certain, however, that I will be able to visit in the future. In particular, considering the Aes Sedai I am traveling with has recently learned the weave for traveling. That is, the method of instant transportation which the Aes Sedai in the Age of Legends used. Rand counted it as a personal victory that Elida, once more, looked visibly shocked and even disbelieving. That is incredible, if it is true. I would like to invite you to meet with her and me soon, Rand said, having recognized several opportunities to smooth certain issues out thanks to Elida's cooperative attitude. Preferably as early as tomorrow. I will soon have to accompany Loghain's prisoner transport to Tar Valon, Elida said. Which could be done by gateway, Rand pointed out. We could drastically reduce your travel time. Elida nodded. Then I would come visit tomorrow. Where are you and your Aes Sedai staying? The Queen's blessing, Rand responded. Thank you, Elida Sedai. He turned to Morghese again. My queen, knowing I can visit at almost any time, do I have your permission to leave? I am sure that with the help of Elida Sedai, the Aes Sedai accompanying me, or perhaps even another that is taught the weave of traveling, you will be able to summon me with little difficulty. Not that there was likely to be much summoning once Rand had claimed Kalandor. It would instead be a request for diplomatic talks or something along those lines. But this was the language that befitted the current situation. You have my permission, Morghese said. Do not make me regret the decisions I have made today, Rand al'Thor, son of Tigraine. I won't, my queen, Rand responded, after which he bowed. This time as befitting a high-ranking noble instead of a commoner. Elaine, Goin, you may accompany your guest to the gates. Rand walked along with the two, and it wasn't long before Elaine noticed. You know your way around the palace. I am a man of many talents, Rand responded. She snorted. And surprises. I do seem to make a habit of leaving an impression. I can't imagine why. Please do remain silent to Galad, at least for the moment, Rand said. I imagine he'll want to get to know me once he learns of our relation, but I'm going to be incredibly busy in the near future. You really are the Dragon Reborn, aren't you? Elaine said. And that portal you created, is that traveling too? It is, Rand admitted. And thank you. And you, Gawain, for not revealing that. I do not think Elida would have reacted favorably. It is better for her to learn this a few weeks into the future, once I've had time to prepare. Do you think you will be able to make an actual difference in such a short time span? Elaine asked. Rand smirked. I will be removing the taint from Sadine soon. Both Elaine and Gawain gasped. And I think I have a way to prove success to Elida. That's impossible, Elaine exclaimed. Is it? Rand countered. Mo! Has anyone ever tried? Well, I mean, if it were possible, wouldn't they have done it in the Age of Legends, right when it happened? Society was falling apart during the War of the Shadow, Rand said, suddenly feeling morose. And what parts remained broke down when the 100 companions went insane, the very moment they sealed the bore and locked the Dark One away. They did not have a gradual descent into madness like the men you've heard of in modern times. They just went crazy immediately and were causing large-scale destruction before anyone even knew what had happened. But consider this. We know that the wheel spins 7 ages, which repeat time after time again, although an age is long forgotten by the time it returns. This means Sedin must have been tainted before, in a previous turning of the wheel when the second age became the third age, and sometime between that previous third age and the Age of Legends, the taint was removed. That sounds like it makes sense, Elaine said slowly. They left the palace and entered the courtyard. Why did you even reveal so much to us? Elaine questioned. We never even met before. I mean, I'm not going to tell anyone what you told us, but still. Rand smiled mysteriously. Or tried to, at least. That is one secret I'm not going to tell you. Or at least not yet. But it was nice meeting you, Elaine. And you too, Gawain. I enjoyed it too, Elaine said. Today certainly became more interesting than I'd thought, and that's with Logain's parade on the agenda. Her smile turned mischievous. And you are quite handsome too. Rand had somewhat expected the comment, which mirrored what she'd told him was a goodbye last time, but he certainly had not expected her to lean forward and kiss him on the cheek. Either he'd made a better impression, or she was less restrained with there not being any soldiers nearby. Still, he managed to recover in time to grab Elaine's hand. Yet I pale in comparison to your beauty, my lady. He leaned down and placed a kiss on her hand, then let go, pleased to note her blush. The same meditative exercises that he used to channel were the only reason he did not show a blush himself. Gawain laughed. It got you good, sis. After a moment he added, This is making me think of the common story of the noble knight and the lady he is courting. Rand grinned. Those ladies tend to be proper and dainty and all those things. I fear your sister may not wish to be associated with such vile behavior. Elaine, too, laughed. And you are far too important to be a knight. I hope to see you again soon, Rand. Likewise, Elaine, Rand responded. And I wish you a good time at the White Tower. With that, he turned and left, wondering how long it would take Elaine to realize she'd never told him that she would accompany Elida to Tar Valon and become a novice. You've been gone for longer than I expected, Moraine said. Longer than I expected too, Rand admitted. Today has been full of surprises. Speaking of which, we need to prepare. He led the way to the library, Moraine following behind him. For what? She asked. Rand didn't answer until he'd closed the door behind her and they were assured of privacy. Only Loyal was here. We will be welcoming Elida tomorrow. Moraine froze, staring at him in shock. Loyal was the first to recover. I'm sorry, Rand, he said in his slow, rumbling voice. I believe I must have heard you wrong. Weren't we trying not to draw her attention? Moraine asked. Hey, I know you said you might run into her while you went off on your somewhat reckless plan to meet the daughter heir, but none of that included inviting her over. Even outside of what you told me about her activities in the ill future, I would prefer to see her as little as possible. She had a foretelling, Rand said, but a completely different one from the first time around. It left her with a rather more positive opinion of me, and Queen Morghese decided to turn the interrogation, I suppose, into something of a private meeting to question me about certain things. Considering the wording of the foretelling and the way the Queen and Elida seemed to be regarding me, I decided to first reveal my heritage, and then that I am Davern. This prompted Elida to reveal a foretelling she had in the past that she now believes she has misinterpreted for a long time. What it comes down to is that she considers me the key to defeating the Dark One in the last battle, although she does not know that I am the Dragon Reborn, or indeed a channeler at all. I'm seeing a few ways in which we could make use of this. If I still had any doubts about your Tavervan nature, they are gone now, Moraine said, sitting down. Rand took a chair that allowed for easy eye contact. I'll do you one better, Rand smirked. Loghain very visibly reacted when he saw me, as he has the talent to see Taveren. So, what did you come up with? Moraine asked. Hey, my primary concern with cleansing set in, apart from making sure we won't be interrupted, was that many Aes Sedai would likely not believe it worked. With Elida's cooperation, even if she does not know the actual plan, we can make sure a large group of trustworthy Aes Sedai will back up the claim. On top of that, if Elida herself were to be supportive of me, which seems to be how she's already leaning, it gives me a way in with the Red Ajah. Of course, I also have a way in with the Blue Ajah through you and the Amelin, and the combination will hopefully reduce tensions between the two Ajahs, which might drag the other Ajahs along. A more unified White Tower, in particular one on good terms with me, would be a major advantage. You are putting a lot of faith in a woman who showed herself untrustworthy in your old timeline, Moraine said. One that I myself am not particularly inclined to trust either. If there is one thing the previous timeline shows, it is that Elida cannot be trusted with power, Rand said. Which is why I am willing to go to great lengths to ensure she does not get it. But while she was always known as harsh and abrasive, she was not a power-crazed lunatic during her time as Queen Morghese's advisor. When you also consider that the Black Ajah was elbow-deep into her administration, and indeed into the act of deposing Siwan itself, as well as the major differences in her attitude to me, which will likely extend to you and Siwan to a degree. Due to the different foretelling she had today and her past foretelling, I believe it is unlikely for her to walk that same path. I am skeptical, but then I do not see how you wish to secure Elida's cooperation in the first place. Rand smiled. Then, let me explain. Elida was in a pensive mood, although others might call it impatience or even more abrasive than usual, as she strode through the city towards the inn named the Queen's Blessing. The abundance of white cloth and the occasional screamed insults certainly did not help in that regard. She was unsure whether to be hopeful or suspicious after the rather unusual meeting with the man who called himself Rand ul'Thor yesterday. About the only thing she was sure of was that the man was Tavern, as he had claimed. He had seemed too knowledgeable and too calm, as if he had not believed himself to be in any possible danger at any one time. Sure of himself, yet always respecting Morghese and Elida's positions. At the same time, Elida doubted he had extended that to the unruly daughter heir, which she believed might have been part of why Elaine was so willing to defend him in the first place, as if he had known exactly how to approach her. And that was before taking into account the words that had unexpectedly left Elida's own mouth. With the false dragon Loghain on her mind, and prophecies about the Shadow and Tarmon Gaidon on her tongue, it was a small jump for Elida to wonder whether Rand ul'Thor might be a false dragon or, light forbid, the true Dragon Reborn. But even though he might be an enigma, he was also unquestionably sane. And more importantly, there was no way the Dragon Reborn could plausibly be the Eye of the Storm and an Isle of Calm in a sea of destruction. No. The Dragon Reborn was, or rather would be, the storm and the destruction. By that reasoning, Althor might even be the one who protected those around him from the chaos the Dragon Reborn brought, if he really was going to appear soon. And of course, this was yet further supported by the last part of her foretelling, that he would protect and shield the kingdom of Andor, arguably the most powerful nation in the world. And then there was the separate issue that was Logain Ablar, the captured false dragon, who, after always having insisted that he was the true dragon, had suddenly changed his mind yesterday and now said he was indeed a false dragon. Elida had wondered whether this had any connection to Althor, but apart from his Ta'veren nature, she could not see how, and thus she had concluded that it was likely Logain's own madness that had made him change his mind. She arrived at her destination, and the moment she stepped through the door, all conversation went quiet. Her eyes roamed over the patrons before landing on Althor. The man was sharing a table with 4 other youths, 2 boys and 2 girls, the latter 2 being exceptionally strong channelers, immediately drawing Elida's attention. In fact, she was reasonably certain the younger of the 2 was as strong in the one power as Elaine, and the other was even stronger. Had they been hidden in 2 rivers? Based on their somewhat unusual style of dress, and what Althor had told her and Morghese, that seemed the obvious guess. Speaking of, the red-haired man seemed just as much at ease between those 4, presumably his friends, as he had yesterday at the royal court. Then, Elida's attention moved to the next table over, and her face soured. There, accompanied by a man who, despite his greying hair, was clearly still in the prime of his life, probably Althor's adopted father, sat Moiraine and her warder. The Blue Aes Sedai returned her gaze, and although she seemed to return the sentiment, she hid it better. Presumably, she'd known ahead of time that Elida was coming. Elida glanced back at Althor, wondering whether he'd known about the animosity between the red and blue Ajars, and her and Moiraine in particular. It was hard to believe he was not aware of at least the former. As she approached the tables, he was the first to stand. Elida Sedai, thank you for coming to see us. Master Gil has assured us we can use his private dining room for conversation. Shall we move there? Elida nodded minutely. You neglected to tell me that the Aes Sedai you were traveling with is Moiraine. Will that be an issue, considering the magnitude of the topics we will be discussing? Althor responded unfazed. Elida was tempted to say yes, however, he made an annoyingly good point. If this man was the key to defeating the Dark One in the last battle, it would not do to anger him over her dislike of Moiraine. People tended to be much easier to steer in the right direction if they liked you. So instead, she answered in the negative and followed him to the private room, Moiraine behind her. Moraine's warder remained outside, presumably to make sure no one would listen in on them. I know you do not have the best history with each other, but I am glad that you are willing to have this conversation nonetheless, Althor said, unexpectedly taking charge. So he had known about their adverse relationship. It was possible that Moiraine had only informed him after he had spoken with Elida, but she deemed that unlikely. Althor said that you somehow learned the weave for traveling, Elida said skeptically. I did, Moiraine responded, apparently taking over despite first impressions, although I fear I cannot currently reveal how. We would be able to bring you the false dragon and the rest of your traveling party to within about a day's travel from Tar Valon. Any closer than that is problematic for various reasons. And what do you want in return? Elida asked. That was regular Aes Sedai politics, after all. And the Blue Ajar in particular. I will also be sending a letter ahead to the Amelin seat, Moiraine said, and Elida's eyes narrowed slightly. Unlike what seemed to be all other Aes Sedai, Elida had not forgotten that Moiraine Damodred and Siuan Sanche had been practically inseparable before they were raised to the shawl. She did not buy for a second that the 2 had not kept up their friendship, and possibly more than that, after becoming Aes Sedai, no matter what they tried to make the world believe. In the meanwhile, Moiraine continued speaking. In this letter, I am suggesting that the Amelin seat leads a rather unusual experiment. She will ask you to participate, and our request of you is that you not only accept, but actively support her in this endeavor. What is this experiment? Elida asked skeptically. It concerns the false dragon Logain, Moiraine said. I've heard about and personally encountered several signs that Tarmon is near, and your foretellings only add to this. I believe that it would be highly valuable for the White Tower to have a better understanding of the taint on Sedin than we currently do. All we know right now is that its insanity takes hold slowly over the course of years, although there are signs that the speed at which it propagates depends on the frequency with which a man channels, and the amount they channel at once. For the suggested experiment, the goal is simply to briefly form a circle that includes the false dragon where? Never, Elida said decisively. How will you ensure the true Dragon Reborn remains sane until Tarmon dawn if you do not know anything about the taint? Rand parried immediately. We keep him shielded until that day comes, Elida responded. And never train him? Rand asked. How will you convince him not to turn on you? Where will he gain the skills to fight the armies of the Dark One? Who will fight the Forsaken? Elida Sedai, the first Forsaken, are breaking away from the seals on the Dark One's prison as we speak. I have encountered one of them in my dreams. You and Moiraine cannot stand up to them. Egwene and Nynaeve are untrained and barely have sufficient power to delay them. How many channelers do you know that can match the commanders of the Dark One's army from the Age of Legends? How will you stop Grandal from worming her way into the minds of rulers? How will you protect kings and lords from Samael's blade? How will you avoid Messiana stirring strife in the White Tower when even your most powerful allies are but annoying pests to them? If he goes insane, he will cause a destruction worse than all 13 Forsaken together. So study the taint, Rand responded. Learn what it does, how it acts, so that you can ensure that the Dragon Reborn will not suffer. Its maddening influence. If that were possible, the Aes Sedai of old would have done so. The breaking of the world followed immediately on the War of the Shadow, Moiraine argued. Their world was torn apart before they had the ability to study the taint, and they knew even less about it to start with than we do now. This is the favor I ask in exchange for lending you my ear in the future, Rand said, to support the Amelin seat in this one experiment. Elida knew with absolute certainty that the two were keeping something important from her, and if she had not known better, she would have said that the man before her was the Dragon Reborn himself. No, most likely he would be a counter to the Dragon Reborn, perhaps even the one through which the Dragon Reborn could be kept under control. However, if this was the favor Ulthor wanted to ask, she could honor that. He could have requested far worse. What is the experiment? To link to the false dragon and pass leadership of the link to all sisters, each holding on long enough to ensure they can recognize the taint, and no longer. Then, one more experiment several days later, similar but not identical to the first. And in exchange, Rand Ulthor will take me on as an advisor if I request it, Elida said. It would have been a far riskier deal had her own foretelling not revealed that he would become a leader. That is acceptable to me, Rand said. To me as well, Moiraine said. Then we are agreed. I will support the Amelin seat in this experiment and participate myself. No matter how much it disgusted her that she would have to channel any amount of that tainted Sedin, the deal was worth it. Even discounting the minute chance they might actually learn something useful from this ridiculous experiment. When will you be ready to leave for Tar Valon? Moiraine asked. Later this afternoon. Then I will be by to provide the gateway. We will ourselves leave soon after, but once I am less strapped for time, I will seek the opportunity to spread knowledge of the required weave. Elida nodded. I will be on my way. Mother? I have succeeded in my endeavors, but in doing so, I have encountered many surprises even beyond what I was prepared for, some of which Elida Sedai will be able to tell you about once she arrives, which should be sooner than you expect. Many things that I want to share with you are too important to leave to a letter, and I will aim to visit the White Tower as soon as possible. Hopefully no more than a week from when you read this. There is one thing that is of immediate and utmost concern. I will ask that you trust me in this request, no matter what it takes. When the false dragon arrives, do not carry out his sentencing and punishment immediately. Rather, find 2 Aes Sedai of every Ajar, preferably respected individuals. Together with these 14 sisters, form a circle with the false dragon, and pass along leadership of the circle to every sister, until they are all confident in their ability to recognize the taint on Sedin. I have reliable information that with a man present, you and all 14 sisters can join in the circle at the same time. In addition, it is not even possible for the false dragon to lead the circle so long as 13 or more Aes Sedai are in it, and no other men are. Then, several days later, gather the same Aes Sedai and repeat this experiment. You will know when will be the right time for this. To secure the false dragon's assistance, promise him a delay of punishment by a week or 2. Last, please invite Elida to this experiment. She has promised to support you in this, and is aware of the nature of the first experiment. I like her as little as ever, but I have reason to believe she will not cause trouble in the near future. Signed, Moiraine de Modred. Juan Sanchez stared at the letter. What had that bloody woman been doing this time? He sighed. She really, really wanted to tear the letter to pieces, burn it, and declare Moiraine's ridiculous request total nonsense. But damn it, she trusted the woman. And from the way she had written the letter, she knew damn well that a stunt on this level would cost Xuan significant political capital in the tower, and that she was convinced it was worth it. And how had she secured the cooperation of that red pain in the arse? Why do we have to leave now? Matt grumbled. Because we don't have much time, Rand responded as he prepared his horse. I had to ensure everything lines up, as a cooperative and unified White Tower will save us an incredible number of headaches down the line. But now, the first Forsaken are about to escape, and we must head them off at the eye of the world. We're bloody insane, Matt muttered. They're Forsaken. Why exactly are we not running to Ilion yet? Would you rather face Samael instead? At least that's where he went last time. Bloody hell. Darabon, then. That's as far as you can get from Shi'enar, right? Mokadian, Rand said. Bilal. Blood and ashes. I should just stay here. Gravin. Matt stared at his longtime friend. Are you bloody kidding me? We've also got Lanfear chasing me around, Ishmael running around the place believing he's the Dark One, Graendal in Arad Doman, Semihaj joining up with invaders from across the sea, Messiana infiltrating the Aes Sedai. What do you prefer? A simple life, Matt grunted. Rand laughed. So much for our grand adventure. Come on, Matt, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. We know what we're up against, we know what we can do, and our enemy is completely in the dark and working off of a multitude of incorrect assumptions. We're ticking every single box for a successful battle. You're lacking in soldier morale, Matt argued. Rand laughed. So you have been paying attention. Luckily, the soldiers that are lacking in morale are not supposed to even enter the battle. Everyone ready? Moiraine called. Way! They were still in the stables, Tom Merrilin having rejoined them. There was enough bad blood between him and both Elida and Morghese that they'd decided it was best if he didn't show his face during the Aes Sedai's visit. In addition, Loal had also decided to travel with them, expressing interest in seeing the influence of a Taverna up close. No calls to wait came, so after making certain no one else was present, Moiraine wove a gateway that led to a forested area where snow still dotted the landscape. Rand was the first one to step through into the chilly wind, leading his horse with him. It's cold here, Matt muttered after he stepped out of the gateway, already rubbing his arms. Enjoy it while it lasts, Rand said. The blight is like an oven, and not a dry one. It's not like I want to go there. If you want me to deal with the taint before I start to go insane, yes you do. Now stop moping. You're not going to be in any danger. Worst case, I need to channel for a bit, and Agenor and Balthamel are both not entirely there anymore. Plus, we have the element of surprise. What about Ishmael? Rand kept his grin off his face. No matter his attitude, Matt did pay attention. He'll focus entirely on me. If he's even physically there in the first place. Enough dawdling, Moiraine said. Let's go. Why can't we go straight to the eye? Perrin asked. Because it moves, Moiraine said. It's always located in a different position and appears based on need. Not quite true, Rand corrected, although it does give off that impression. The weaves protecting the eye play with the perceptions of those nearby, confusing them and leading them across strange paths to make it appear as if the location of the eye shifts. This protects it against the forces of the shadow that surround it on all sides, but also confuses previous visitors like me and Moraine enough that we cannot simply make a gateway there. With the knowledge I have now, I could overcome these protections, but that is not enough to work off of an older memory. Will you be able to lead us straight there, then? Moraine asked. I should be able to, Rand responded. I expect this is also what allowed Agenor and Balthamel to find it, despite having no need to be there. Is that why you felt comfortable spending the night in Faldara? Moraine asked. Yes, Rand replied. And we've also won a full day because we didn't use the ways. Faldara, Mumat asked. The northernmost fortified town in Shi'enar, Rand replied. We will be meeting with Lord Agelmar there. One of the great generals, Matt said. Indeed, although we will not be talking about any of that yet. For the next hour, their small but ever-growing party made its way through the frigid land where spring had not yet arrived, although, Rand realized, that was a common factor across the entire Westlands, perhaps even the entire world. Still, it was even more apparent here. Then, they crested one last hill, and Faldara came into view. It had been built for purpose in its entirety, with imposing grey walls and towers dominating the view. And outside those walls, a large stretch of land it had. All its trees and other vegetation removed, making it impossible to sneak up to the fortifications without being detected. Inside the walls, Rand knew, there was a law that no one was allowed to hide their face for any reason, as this would leave Myrddraal unable to hide. Similarly, at night, every street would be lit, preventing Myrddraal from slipping into or out of shadows. An ability even Rand, with all his knowledge, could not figure out. The best theory was that it was, in some twisted way, associated with the One Power. This itself depended on another theory. When Agenor had created the Trollocs, he had used humans for his experiments and combined them with animals through a mixture of genetic manipulation and the One Power. The Myrddraal themselves had been an unexpected result, occasionally being born to Trollocs, but one theory regarding their origin was that Myrddraal were those individuals that, if they had been human, would have been channelers. As they approached the gates, Lan told them all to take off their facial coverings and explained the reason for this. Shortly after, the first shouts came. Daishan, Galishan. Last time, Rand had been confused. This time, he kept half an eye on Lan, although the warder didn't betray any emotion. Will the golden crane fly again? One soldier asked, but Lan gave a non-committal answer. The warder was incredibly well respected in the Borderlands, and not without reason. Not only was he one of the best blade masters in the entire Westlands, with unparalleled knowledge of the Blight, he was also the uncrowned king of Malkia, which had been betrayed and fallen to the Blight when Lan was still in diapers. Until he had become Moraine's warder, Lan had always considered it his destiny to fight the Blight until his death, and part of him still did. However, he always sought to do so alone, without leading other men to their deaths. And the Golden Crane, of course, was the symbol of Malkia. Loyal, too, was recognized, although merely as an Ogier. He was surprised for a moment, before smiling widely and returning the greetings. Faldara was crowded beyond belief, certainly as busy as Cayman had been, but the mood was subdued. Rand remembered why. Masses of Trollocs had been gathering at Tarwin's Gap, the pass between Malkia and the Blasted Lands, a natural choke point. Tomorrow, the armies of Shi'enar would ride to stand against the Shadow, and they were riding out to die, based on what the scouts had been reporting. It was why Lan's appearance was so anticipated. People were expecting him to ride with them. Perhaps they were even expecting a miracle from a man who was an icon of the everlasting war with the Blight. They arrived at the fortress in the center of the city, to more shouts for Lan and the Golden Crane. Here, it was as busy as it had been in the entire city, but there was a purpose to it. Smiths, Fletchers, everyone was busy preparing as much for the coming battle as they could. Despite that, A grizzled man in armor immediately approached them when they arrived at the stables. Ingtar. The last time around, the man had given his life for Rand, seeking to make amends for his actions as a dark friend. A cause he was currently still dedicated to, if Rand remembered correctly. It was the events surrounding their visit to Faldara, and the months after that had given the man hope the light might still win. And knowing that, Rand saw no reason to condemn him now. Ingtar would almost certainly have the same change of heart this time around, making him a more reliable ally than many of the non-dark friends Rand had dealt with over the years. Lan asked Ingtar about the situation, receiving a rather optimistic report that even Rand's friends probably saw through immediately. The man guided them to Lord Egelmar's study and said his goodbyes, returning to his duties. Egelmar rose and exchanged greetings with the group, while a few servants brought refreshments and some cloths to wipe away dust. He led them to a sitting room adjacent to his study, where everyone took a seat. "A long journey from Tar-Valon," Egelmar said. "You must be tired." "Our journey was both shorter and longer than that," Moraine replied. "We ask to stay here for one night of rest and fresh supplies, if you can spare them." Egelmar frowned, clearly having hoped Moraine would aid the fight at Tarwin's Gap, and Lan too. He voiced that thought, pointing out that Moraine would be an army by herself, and if Lan flew the Golden Crane, an army would follow him. "All is not yet lost," Rand interrupted. "We must travel into the Blight now, but the Shadow may find itself surprised, thinking it has the advantage when it does not." "Confident words," Egelmar said. "Who may you be, young man?" "Rand Althor, from Two Rivers. I fear there is little more I can say right now, although I am sure we will meet again soon." "You all are?" Egelmar asked, his eyes passing over their group. "Those I do not know, that is." "All but Tom," Rand responded, indicating the Gleeman. "I would have sooner thought you were an Aiel," Egelmar admitted. "And you hold yourself different from your friends too." "I am not from the Two Rivers by blood," Rand nodded. "I fear I cannot divulge too much else, although I can say that Moiraine Sedai knows my secrets." Egelmar glanced at the Aes Sedai, who nodded. "Then that is enough for me. Moiraine Sedai, do you need aid in your incursion into the Blight?" "No," Moraine answered. "The more men we have, the easier we would be to spot, and they could not contribute to our cause. I have confidence that we can achieve our goals." "Then that is more than I can say regarding Tarwin's Gap," Egelmar admitted. "I wish you all the best of luck. Perhaps you could table with us tonight." "We would be honored," Moiraine responded. They left as soon as the sun rose above the horizon. Unlike last time, Egelmar had not insisted on sending Ingtar along with an honor guard, probably due to the confidence in Rand and Moiraine's words. He had seemed very curious about Rand's importance within the group, in a world where those who dealt with channeling and other such matters were always women, but at the same time he had been unwilling to question Moraine too thoroughly, and Rand was, for now, equally tight-lipped. Once Seddon was cleansed, he could afford to be more loose about his identity as the Dragon Reborn. Besides which, he would have Kalendor to prove who he was. "I suppose you've never been to the Blight before?" Rand commented to his father as they rode. "I haven't," he replied, "and I will admit that I am not looking forward to it." "It isn't a nice place," Rand said, "obviously, but it's the only way we can ensure we can set the important events to our hand. I hope I won't have to channel before we get there." "That's a possibility?" Clam asked. "We managed last time, but we did have to fight," Rand said. "And we were saved by the call of a worm in the distance, from which we were then in turn saved by the eye appearing before the passes, instead of after them. Although I should be able to lead us there more quickly in the first place, this time around." "You mentioned that 2 of the Forsaken were there, didn't you?" Tam asked, and Rand had to commend the lack of wavering in his voice. "Wouldn't that be thrown off because we are a day earlier this time?" "It might be, but I doubt it," Rand said. "It's possible that our presence there helped draw them in, and there's also our Taveran nature. What will we do if they do not appear?" "We'll stay at the Eye," Rand decided after only a moment of thought, "and wait for them." Tam nodded, and they continued riding in silence. It was shortly after that they reached the boundary of the Blight, marked by a series of towers, each on top of a hill. They were built to allow a small force to hold out against an overwhelming force for as long as possible, and contained both mirrors which could signal using the sun, as well as bonfires that could be lit. A small border post next to the road, still proclaiming this was where Shi'Anar bordered Malkia, was the only other marker. A shiver went through Rand as they passed it, like the air was colder here. But that was all that showed they were now in the Blight. "Is this it?" Matt asked. "It doesn't look any different." "But not here, it doesn't," Lan said. "And please remember not to touch anything," Moraine warned. "Even flowers or leaves can be deadly here. There's a little thing called a stick that likes to hide where the leaves are thickest, looking like its name, waiting for something to touch it. When something does, it bites, but not poison. The juice begins to digest the stick's prey for it. The only thing that can save you is to cut off the arm or leg that was bitten. But a stick won't bite unless you touch it. Other things in the Blight will." There seemed to be little change from moment to moment as they rode through the forests, but the temperature of the air increased steadily, as Rand, who was watching for it, noticed quickly. "It feels wrong," Nynaeve commented after Egwene pointed it out. Indeed, they began to take off layer after layer of clothing while traveling, until they were nothing but summer clothes in a land where spring had so far refused to come. The sun had by now swollen to a red ball, and the air had grown as damp as it was hot, making it difficult to sweat off the heat. For others, that was, both Rand and Moiraine had fallen back on the ancient trick that allowed them to ignore uncomfortable weather, as had been passed down the Aes Sedai from all the way back in the Age of Legends, where Rand had originally picked it up. Indeed, despite the dry ground, it felt as if they were traveling through a swamp. Rand was also the first to spot the way in which the Blight twisted the plant growth. Here and there, plants would have leaves, unlike their counterparts in Shi'Anar. But those leaves contained sickly yellow colors and black flecks of disease. Matt expressed his disgust when he noticed himself. Perrin, on the other hand, was surprisingly unmoved, a trait that originated from his wolf brother nature. Wolf brothers, like all wolves, hated the shadow with a passion, and little satisfied them more than to fight it. Sometimes, at least for wolves, even at the cost of their own lives. "This is the Blight?" he asked. "Just the fringe," Lan replied grimly. Indeed, the further they rode, the worse the corruption became. Trees had more and more leaves, but they were twisted, yellow, black, and red. Bloated, overripe fruit in sickly colors hung from the trees, and even leaves took on that appearance from time to time. Rot seemed to be everywhere, and the stench of decay was fighting the taste of spoiled meat with every breath. Matt was affected the worst, leaning out of his saddle to empty his stomach, then repeating that several times in the next hours despite having nothing left to lose. Egwene and Nynaeve only did marginally better. The others, including Tom, were more able to keep themselves under control, including, once again, Perrin. He and Loyal seemed more concerned with the affront to nature that the Blight was than its sickening effects on all of them. "I'll be glad when we're out of here," Matt muttered at some point. "We won't have to journey back after we've been to the Eye," Rand said. "We can simply travel across the continent by gateway to get our affairs in order. This time next week, we'll be in Tyr, where it might be almost as hot and damp as here, but at least an apple tree is unlikely to bite your hand off. The longer we are away from home, the more I start thinking it's the best place to be." Rand laughed. "The unknown is always a draw, but we were quite lucky with where we were born, or, in my case, with where the person who found me lived." In the evening, they camped on a bare hill, the same spot Rand remembered from last time around, with the ruins of the 7 towers of Malkia's fallen capital visible in the distance, and nearby the string of lakes that were deceptively normal until the surface was disturbed and a gigantic mass of tentacles appeared. At least such displays helped scare Matt into not doing anything stupid. And tomorrow would be the big day. They would have to kill 3 Forsaken that day, or Rand might not be able to cleanse Sedin for weeks or even months longer, although perhaps the White Tower could help out if that came to pass. Siwan Sanche strode forward in all her regal Amelin seatness to welcome the rather early arrival of Elida, the daughter heir of Andor, the false dragon, the Aes Sedai guards of that false dragon, and of course everyone else accompanying them. Daughter. She was in the courtyard of the White Tower, and sisters were streaming in, all of them no doubt curious how they could be here already. Mother, Elida responded coolly. You are several weeks early, Siuan noted. Implausibly early, in fact. Although she refused to reveal how, Moiraine Sedai has rediscovered the weave for traveling and brought us almost all the way here. Siuan almost lost her composure at that revelation. She would have loved to respond with some ridiculous fishing-themed saying to throw out, but it seemed as if she was too shocked to make one up on the spot, as she usually did. No one would dare call her out on it after all. That is, unbelievable, she settled on eventually. Did she teach you? No, Elida said sourly, although she said she was willing to share the knowledge once she has more time. I will speak to her about it soon, Siuan said. She was going to have words with Moiraine. And if she could travel, then why was she and the Dragon Reborn not here already? She turned to the Aes Sedai who were watching over Logain. Take the false dragon to the dungeons. Keep him shielded. You know what to do. We will not quite perform his gentling immediately, but soon. That surprised the sisters, although Elida clearly knew already, but no one went against a direct order from the Amelin seat. Confident they would do as she told them, Siuan turned back to Elida. Daughter, you will join me in my office to discuss certain matters. Yes, Mother. Elida clearly did not like it, but also recognized that they would have to talk through what was about to happen. Together, the two, enemies, at least politically, walked through the halls of the White Tower all the way to the top. Siuan invited the Red Sister in, and they sat down. Siuan at her desk to remind the woman of her authority. You spoke with Moiraine, then? I did. The letter that she sent me indicated that she was traveling with others. What do you know about them? Elida clearly wasn't eager to tell Siuan any more than she had to, but Siuan wanted to have as much information as possible with her incredibly annoying friend throwing everything off course. I did not speak to most of them, Elida said. There were 5 youths from 2 rivers, 3 boys and 2 girls. The girls are powerful channelers, at least on par with Elaine. There was also an older man, the father of one of the boys. But you did speak to some of them? Siuan asked. I spoke to one, Elida said. His name was Rand al'Thor, and while he was raised in 2 rivers, he clearly had foreign blood, possibly even Aiel. It was his father, or perhaps adopted father, who was with them. Aiel. The Dragon Reborn was born at the end of the Aiel War. This had to be him. What did you speak with him about? Siuan asked. He ended up being questioned by the Queen after some unlikely events transpired, Elida said, taking the time to pick her words carefully, likely holding back significant information. Certain matters raised piqued my interest, leading to a second conversation with him and Moiraine Sedai. It was in this second conversation that I promised my support for the experiment she suggested. I assume you have received her letter about it? I have, Siuan confirmed. What was your impression of this man, Rand al'Thor? He seems to be a natural leader, Elida said, although he does not currently lead anyone. He is confident and far more knowledgeable than I would expect from someone raised in 2 rivers. I also suspect that he may be Taverhan. That particular nugget of information did not surprise Siuan at all. The rest, however, she would have to meet him herself, as there was certainly more at play than Elida seemed willing to reveal. Part of Siuan wanted to try to squeeze it out of the Red Sister, however it wasn't worth antagonizing her just ahead of the experiment that Moiraine insisted on. An experiment that, by Siuan's estimate, neither she nor Elida were enthusiastic about, but at the same time she was surprised that anyone had managed to convince Elida to participate. That was yet another sign that Rand al'Thor, as it had most likely been him who convinced her, was the Dragon Reborn, and indeed a Taverhan. Let's discuss this experiment now, Siuan said, and which sisters we will ask to participate in it. This was likely going to be another long conversation. Siuan saw no reason to delay matters. It would only give the hall more opportunity to obstruct her. so she scheduled the test for the very next day after Logain's arrival. After she and Elida had picked the participants, based on how unlikely it was for them to raise a major stink about it, they had spoken to each of them individually and, with a lot of wrangling, gotten them on board and even squeezed out promises to not reveal what they were going to do to anyone until afterwards. So, on the afternoon of the next day, Siwan and 12 sisters, Elida included, made their way down to the dungeons. The false dragon's guards had been informed too, and provided the last 2 sisters to participate in the circle. Before they met Logain, Siwan stopped the group in the hallway, out of hearing range. "I expect that all of you are hesitant to participate in this experiment," she said, to murmured assent from everyone, except the Browns. Varen seemed distracted, as so often, while the other Brown representative appeared to be excited. "I am not particularly eager myself," Siwan continued, "but it was pointed out by the sister who proposed the experiment that knowing more about the taint could be the difference between a sane Dragon Reborn and one that destroys the world. With recent events and reports from the borderlands, while we can all hope that Tarman Gaidon is still far away, it is still best to be prepared. In addition," Elida added, "I have reason to believe we may be closer than most of us think, based on things said at the Andoran court." She and Siwan had agreed that Elida would show her support for this experiment in order to smooth over possible political tensions, as they were themselves political opponents. A show of unity would emphasize that they both believed this to be important. However, Elida had refused to elaborate what exactly had been said, and if Siwan's eyes and ears had caught something, their information had not yet made it to Tarvalon. "I think we should have done this long ago," Varen said absently. "But it is good to remedy past mistakes." "Quite," Siwan agreed. "We've already discussed many of the doubts some of you have when you were asked to participate in the first place, so we will simply go and see whether we can learn anything useful." She led the way into the dungeons, joining the 2 sisters who were still waiting outside Logain's cell. They had remained in a circle with the 2 that were joining the experiment. "Logain habla," Siwan spoke, standing in front of the bars. "Siwan Sanche, the Amelin seat," he responded. Despite being dirty, despite no doubt being tired, Logan did not appear a broken or humbled man. He stood proud and met Siwan's gaze in a way few could, despite the bars between him and freedom. "We wish to perform a minor experiment, which would require several of us to link with you in a circle. Are you aware what a circle is?" Logain laughed. "I am not some commoner, Amelin." "Yes, I know what a circle is. What surprises me is that Aes Sedai would willingly link with a man." "You will not be able to control the circle," Siwan said severely, although Logain seemed unfazed about that. Perhaps he had been referring to the taint, not a risk, imagined or otherwise, of him taking over. "Are you willing to lend your abilities in this matter?" She tried to keep her voice neutral, but some disgust tinged it nonetheless. "Why would I?" Logain asked, seeming amused. "What's in it for me?" "What do you consider a fair exchange?" Siwan asked, genuinely curious what he would answer. "Release?" The false dragon dared. Siwan raised an eyebrow impassively. Logain chuckled. "So, not quite a free pass to ask for whatever I want." He hummed as he considered his actual offer. "Delay my gentling by 2 months, so that I may live that much longer. And a nicer place to stay than this cell. So long as you keep me shielded, I am no escape risk, and attempting physical violence would merely get me killed immediately." 2 weeks, Siwan countered. "So little?" Logan asked, again daring. Siwan thought. "Oh! And after you have been gentled, you shall be free to go, rather than being forced to remain at the White Tower, on the condition you do not name yourself the Dragon Reborn again." Logain laughed, more loudly this time. "That will be no problem, for I now know that I never was the Dragon Reborn."